subphylum Vertebrata. So the animals in the Vertebrata are known as vertebrates, and these are the most abundant and the largest and diverse group of the animals existing nowadays. And among this subphylum, we see all those animals which we are familiar with, including ourselves. Right? Then we generally discussed their characteristics, that what their bodies look like, and we discussed them along the evolutionary and phylogenetic relationship features. So I just go quickly through those general features for those who were not present in yesterday's class. First of all, their body is completely divided into three parts: the head, trunk, and the tail. Head is the most significant and interior part of the animal body, having the developed brain and sensory organs and mouth and pharyngeal region, and that all is covered and protected by a bony skeletal support, or the cranium. Right, so here we see that along those evolutionary characteristics which we discussed in earlier lectures, these animals have well developed cephalization. Then comes their trunk, that has the main body cavity and all body organs and housed within it, and the lastly there is the tail. Right, so all of the animals in the vertebrata will have the similar body plan. If we talk about the body wall, we see that the body wall and its complexity is getting increased with the passage of time. We see that body walls originated in the earlier invertebrates, but they were simpler in nature, single layer epithelial type layers. Then later in the insects, they started producing some sclerotin and the chitin based exoskeleton and integumentary system. Then in the mollusks, we see the calcium carbonate deposits on slugs, on snails and starfish, etc. Right, and then we move towards the urochordates. They have the leathery skin or leathery integument made up of tunisin and cellulose and some other compounds. Right, and then cephalochordates again has a simpler epithelium, like our simple integument. Now in the vertebrates, subphylum Vertebrata, the body wall will have a stratified appearance, multiple layers, and those layers can perform specific functions, and they have two different origins. Here we see that epidermis, which is ectodermic in origin, and has further divided into five different layers based on the type of the cells and their structure. Just to give the brief introduction, the outermost layer which we can see and touch is the stratum corneum. These are highly keratinized and cornified cells, almost dead. And stratum malpighi, or the basal layer, stratum basal, is the basal or the basic layer at the bottom of the epidermis that produces all different types of the cells. Right, and then we discuss that epidermis is the part of the skin which does not have any innervation or any vascular system, no blood supply, no endocrine supplies, and they get their nutrition from the underneath layer, that is the dermis. Dermis is the second and the largest part of the integument or skin, so that has all those vascularization and nerves present within it, and it nourishes itself and the layer on top of it, and these are mesodermic in origin. The third characteristics, we see that not only this integument is getting highly specialized and complex in structure, but it also giving rise to more adaptations and derivatives, which include scales in fish and reptiles, those bony plates in turtles, and then scutes in crocodiles, scales, feathers in the birds, or hair in mammals. So these are all the part of their skin. Then we see the major difference and the evolution of the musculature system in the animals, starting from invertebrates to the higher vertebrates with higher vertebrates. So we see that until the life was simple and they were living in the aquatic habitat, they had simple blocks of the muscles that were attached to the skin or some to themselves in the form of the circular or longitudinal muscles, and they contract and relax to produce locomotory movements. But once the animal moved out of the water and have developed four limbs, and the complex and diversified internal skeleton, endoskeleton. So this musculature has changed their arrangement, and now they are arranged in antagonistic manner, and they're attached to the bones, which helps to move the animal on their will. And these muscles, their contraction and their attachment to the bones with the flexible joints, produces such forces that the animal can move the body parts into different complex angles, and they can maintain their posture. Then the skeleton, until the life was confined to the aquatic environment, they mainly have an axial skeleton. Just the backbone was a central axis and have a few bones arising laterally from the backbone to support the whole body. But once the animal moved out or started developing the four limbs, then there was the addition of appendicular skeleton as well, that includes legs and arms. If we see the limbs, all the vertebrates have identical homologous limbs, and regardless of what class they belong to, as you see in this diagram below, you see the arm of a human or a leg of a horse, and so on. So you see all of them have the 5 digits in their hands or in their palm. So this is what we call the pentadactyl limbs. So in short, we can say all vertebrates have pentadactyl limbs, and that suggests that they have evolved from one single ancestor as a result of adaptive radiation or any other evolutionary phenomena. Finally, the gills and pharynx, they have their primary function as a filter feeding. Then they get involved. We see along our previous learning from the other lectures of the subphylums that pharynx or pharyngeal slits were initially evolved to help the animal for filtering their food. Then later on, originated their respiratory function, where the animal have the multiple capillaries in this pharyngeal region, and as the water passes through the pharynx, it exchanges the gases. So that is a respiratory function. And now when the animal is getting evolved again and they have moved out of the water, so there is no direct need of the pharynx to filter food from the water, because they are not living in the water. And secondly, the exchange of gases is different in the dry environment. So this pharyngeal system has now developed to become the solely for respiratory function of the animal. Right, so we will see that how this has evolved into respiratory functions. The pharynx becomes a part of the respiratory system. The swim bladder, which was present in the fishes, developed into the lungs, and so on. Circulation is becoming more complex and advanced, where the animal is having more stronger and well coordinated heart activities, with a muscular heart having 2, 3, or 4 chambers. So these chambers defines the type of the circulatory system the animal have. If they have only 2 chambers, there must be a single cycle of the blood flow in the animal body, and we will discuss it once we move towards the fish. And 3 chambers and 4 chambers, so that circulatory system gets more complex. Nervous system is well developed, have a well developed brain housed within the cranium or the skull, and have all those spinal nerves and cranial nerves coming out from that brain and spinal cord for the body support. And finally, there are few new systems evolved in these groups: endocrine systems, that contains glands; excretory system, that has a specialized kidneys to filtrate and the waste materials and cleanse their blood; urinogenital organs for reproductive and excretory functions together; and having the jaws and type of the different teeth, that defines the animal lifestyle, whether it is predatory or it is feeding on the vegetation, or etc.